Noises were coming from the front porch. It was Samuel's horse, Gemini. Samuel shouted to Gemini, "I'm going to feed you in a little while." "Hold on, dude. Billy, forget that map, show us the world map in 3048. Samuel grabbed a few apples from the table in front of him and placed them on the window sill. "Here you go, for now. Let me finish talking to Cush and I will finish feeding you." "Okay." Cush thought he was seeing things, for it looked as if Gemini shook his head as if to say okay. "Now where was I?" "Again." Samuel said, "Oh, okay. The year was around about 3040, but you can ask Billy, and the planet had been through so much neglect, abuse and war with you-know-who." Pointing to Billy, as he continued, that the planet had to be put on artificial life support by the Abenians. Cush interrupted, "I heard of them, but I never saw one. Except every once in a while, I see them flying." Samuel looked at Cush and said with a smile, "You going to let me tell you my story or what?" He paused as Cush smiled back at him, "Okay." Then pointing to the map, he continued, "Many of our oceans were depleted by almost 90%. What was left were mutants that were unfit for human consumption. All rivers and lakes worldwide had to be purified, then strained because of the many parasites and bacteria. Most of the northern and southern region was frozen and only the Abenians could live there. Alaska, Greenland, and Old England were the only nations in the far north. Everything else was covered in ice and reached temperatures as low as -60 degrees. Cush was about to say something but covered his mouth when his grandfather looked up at him. "Okay, back then. The Middle East is now a world of chaos and confusion, plagued by mental illness and congenital disabilities. Contaminated by radiation because of centuries of bombings and bombardment with chemical and uranium-based weaponry." Showing Cush some before and after pictures, Samuel continued. "The Americas comprised of only about 2/3 of its original size. The San Andres Fault and all the land that once covered it was now underwater and part of the Pacific Ocean. Many of the cities once existed on the other side of Andres Fault are now a trail of islands. From once stood Santa Cruz to the south of San Diego, now, just a small island. Los Angeles was the only city that remained, but it was just a large island. All this is now called the Isles of the Californias. The northern half of what we once called Brazil is also a long trail of islands. As we once knew, Africa is now divided into 3 huge sections with an ocean, the African Ocean, running through it, almost, at a 45-degree angle. What was once India and China is now one country called China, missing the northern section from both countries. The southern part of Africa and about 1/3 of southern Australia and beyond is completely covered in ice and snow, reaching temperatures beyond human existence. This is where the elite, or Alpha Abenians and their minions, control the devices that keep the earth from erupting into a ball of fire and destruction." With a face of unbelief, Cush just sat there. "Billy." Samuel stood up and walked toward the wall, pointing, "Pull up a video of this Mr. Adam Loveass with his ugly ass." Looking at Cush, Samuel said, "There are only 4 classes of people." "Hold on." Reaching for his glasses, "I want to see something. This thing hasn't aged a bit since they have been here almost 900 years and he looks the same as when he arrived." "Hell, they all do." "Cush, look at this thing." "What do you see?" Cush looked confused. "It's a man." "Who is he?" Samuel said, "I guess you still have some growing up to do, both spiritually and physically. You're not ready, Freddie." Samuel took a seat. "Where was I?" Cush said, "4 classes of people." Samuel shook his head. "Yep. Only 4. There are actually 3 classes of people. And then the Abenians, they are something else. The 3 are the Computans, the Anakitas, and us." With his fingers pointed at the both of them, Samuel said, "Wakatilians, according to them, and what separates all of us is our DNA,